Hi, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, do I have a phenomenal guest with me today? If I get emotional during this interview, that's the way I am. I don't apologize for it. It's an emotional subject. I have with me today Kim Canteen, who enjoyed a 20-year career in sales and marketing leadership and medical devices, working for a Fortune 500 company. She later created her own successful marketing consulting firm. She met her loving husband, Dave, at Johnson & Johnson, and together they raised a family with 2 great kids and a goofy dog. She remains an active member of the Santa Barbara community. Kim Canteen is author and writer of this phenomenal, and I mean a phenomenal book, Where Yellow Flowers Bloom, a true story of hope through unimaginable loss. This is Kim Canteen's first book, and in my humble opinion, Kim, you got this home run out of the ballpark. And I want to welcome Kim Canteen to Chatting with Betsy.
Oh, thanks so much, Betsy. Glad to be here.
Oh, you are welcome. Folks, I just want to tell the audience, Kim, I love this book. I love the cover of it, the yellow flowers. There's a figure that could have been your husband or your son. Mm-hmm. Folks, this is a powerful book. And if you've experienced any loss, get this book. Kim, I think, my opinion, your book isn't about you being a victim, but you being a victor. You show such raw, honest emotion about what you went through, losing your husband, your son, your home, what your daughter went through. I just think it's so powerful. Thank you for writing it. And I want to ask you, I know what motivated you to write your book, but could you tell the audience what motivated you to write this wonderful, wonderful book?
Sure. So, almost 6 years ago, January of 2018, a massive tragedy occurred in the middle of the night, right? Part of the mountain came down in a place called Montecito near Santa Barbara. And when it started coming down, it brought down massive boulders the size of cars and downed 100-year-old trees. And it jammed up all the creeks. They overflowed, and a 30-foot wave crashed down on my house in the middle of the night with my family in it. And, my 49-year-old husband was killed. My 17-year-old son was killed, my dog, the house completely washed away, obliterated, everything gone, driver's license, art, family albums, everything. My 14-year-old daughter was buried alive for 6 hours under 20 feet of mud with just a tiny pocket of air in front of her face, allowing her to breathe before her miraculous rescue, and I was washed away 2 football fields, found in an intersection wrapped in electrical wire, severely injured. So I had a tragedy, an unimaginable, unexpected, sudden, traumatic event, and I was, after getting out of the hospital and learning to walk again and stabilizing for my daughter, it was how do we, stabilize and get through this tough time, right? And so we were doing all the things that we should be doing, going to trauma therapy, and I'd go to widow's group or whatever, and getting another house and buying new couches and bed mattresses and toilet bowl plungers for a new house. And then COVID came, and it was a shutdown, right? And so we weren't going out. There wasn't much to do. It was my daughter and I in this house. And I said, I think I'm going to write this down because I didn't want to forget. I didn't want to forget some of the stuff that had happened. I wanted so that my future family, if my daughter has children, that my grandkids will know and hear it from me. And so I started writing, and then once I started writing, it became a reflective process going, wow. I said, look, I'm looking at myself going from a desperate grief to more peaceful acceptance. Interesting. And as I did that, I said, you know what, I think this might help other people. So I think I'm going to make it into a book. And I had encouragement from my son. 23 people died that night, 2 of which the bodies weren't recovered. A baby girl, Lydia, who was 2, and my 17-year-old son, Jack. And so I had a search team that went out for 3 years to look for him and baby Lydia. And we saw some pretty phenomenal, incredible things that happened through that 3 years. And they said, you have to write this down. So it was a combination of COVID shut down, and it became a very cathartic process for me, and I kind of realized this could be helpful to others. So putting a purpose to the tragedy was meaningful to me. And being encouraged by the people who stood by my side for 3 years looking for the missing children and were witness, as like I was, to some pretty stunning things. So that's how it all happened.
Well, I'm glad you wrote your book, Kim. It touched me very deeply. And to me, when I read your book, you don't consider yourself a victim. You became this victorious woman who advocated that you wanted to find your son. You knew you had to find something, that belonged to Jack. And it was just so stunning, and how you talked about your husband and your son. I can't even imagine dealing with the trauma and the tragedy. It's one thing to know that your spouse or your children have a terminal illness, and even that sucks, when that happens. But unexpectedly, and everything gone, and you're severely injured. Your daughter's a miracle that they found her. And people, like most people, I think, would say, I'm giving up on life. But you didn't.
No.
Did your faith play a part?
Sure. I grew up with strong faith. When I was on a debris pile, to calm my nerves. It was interesting when I kind of came to, I think I'd been unconscious. I just said the Lord's Prayer over and over again, and it was this real calming thing. And what I've learned later is there's certain prayers in different religions. So the Lord's Prayer is Christianity. There's different prayers in different religions, but there's certain key prayers in the different religions that have this methodic rhythm to it. And it's calming to the nervous system. And so the one I didn't realize at the time, but the Lord's Prayer is one of those methodic, rhythmic prayers that had a sense of calming to my nervous system. So there was a two-step bonus, right? So yes, I did come with faith. That helped me get through it. And I had a purpose. I had my daughter, right? And she had me. I was her purpose. So if it had happened any other way, imagine if just one of us survived. Then I might be in the fetal position on the floor, right? But I was fortunate for many reasons. I had a purpose, which was stabilize and take care of my daughter. I knew, in my head I framed it, my husband has my son, he's taking care of Jack, I'm taking care of Lauren, and we're still a family. We might be a virtual family, but we're still a family, right? So I had a purpose with that, and I had a purpose, find Jack's remains. And because I had this purpose, right, through that purpose, I was healing. I was healing through trying in the search, because I knew I was doing my best and I was trying my darndest, and that helped me. And it helped me through just various processes of grief. So there was a couple things. And then it was the community, right? People helping others, other humans helping others and showing up for them, not just being a grief tourist, right, stopping in at the very beginning and never touching base, but really compassionate. I really had that in the community of Santa Barbara. That was pretty stunning, and they helped a lot of the people who were survivors of the mudslide.
Yes, that comes across in your book. What a strong community of people that pulled together.
Very compassionate. There's a something in the water or something. It's just a pretty darn compassionate group of people.
So your husband, Dave, if I remember correctly, I read this book a few months ago, was found pretty quickly?
Yeah, he was found that morning. They didn't tell me, I don't think, for a day or two. I was in the hospital, but he was found right away on about a mile and a half away on the surf line of the beach in a debris pile. And they wanted to do proper identification before they told me to make sure they had it right. And I think they also wanted just to make sure that, I had been in surgery. When I first got to the hospital, I had a couple surgeries. And so I think they waited a little bit, until I could be consciously present enough to hear that news.
I can't even imagine the pain and sorrow of losing two people. And they say the loss of a child is worse than anything, you can imagine. I'm going to get emotional.
It is.
I just, I just can't picture that.
I know. It's unnatural. It defies the natural order of things, right? That your children should be burying their parents. And so, and it was complicated. I had what's called complicated grief, right? I lost my loving husband, Dave, who I adored, my 17-year-old son, my 7-year-old beloved Irish setter, who was my favorite dog in the whole wide world, right? And so then I wake up and, then the house is gone. That's more of a nuisance than anything else at that time because it pales in comparison to the family loss. But it was really complicated. Who do I grieve for in this moment? Do I grieve for Jack right now, my son? Dave's not getting enough mind share. And I'll tell you, Dave didn't get enough mind share on the grief early on. I was just so overwhelmed. And so it was delayed more for Dave. But I knew my husband is a very, gracious soul. And he'd be okay with it. He just wanted, he knew I loved him. And but there was so much, and so much was tied into the grieving of my son because I was out there every 2 weeks searching for his remains. So it was, and then I'd be finding stuff out in the debris field, right? I'd find his teddy bear. I'd find his Superman costume. I'd find different things, right? So, it was just complicated. They use the term, I think, in psychology called complicated grief when it's got more elements to it. And then my grief had the trauma with it.
Right. Complicated, and that's even an understatement in your case, Kim. How far away were Jack's belongings? And even your household belongings were found miles away.
It was, it went all over. It was from our house to the ocean was probably about 1.5 miles, right? But it went down, and then eddies formed like little jacuzzis spinning around, and so it went sideways. Some went up. So, for example, there's an item that was my husband's that was found north of us, up from the creek, in the creek, up. It eddied up. A lot of stuff was found within probably 500 yards. They hauled a lot of the stuff away just by hauling it away. But my driver's license was found on a beach 10 miles away. But that happened, I think, because they hauled stuff away and they dumped it on that beach, and so, but they didn't, they were just getting the mud out. They weren't being careful what they were hauling. So it was all over. I mean, all over. My husband's, he had a dive log from scuba diving, and a lady called me in a neighboring town and said there's a debris pile here that they put, and I found your husband's scuba dive log, So, my nightgown was found. Like, it's all over the place, all over. I mean, talk about airing your dirty laundry.
Yeah, and there's pictures in the book, folks, of the belongings that were found. What I found really powerful not just your raw emotion, Kim, but your connection to both Jack and Dave. Dave is Kim's husband, Jack is Kim's son, and the afterlife. I mean, you, and I understand that completely. You believe that Jack was out there. You felt him tell you that. And folks, you might think that's what I could do, but let me tell you what, you are still connected to your loved one. I've gotten signs from my husband. You can think whatever you want of me. I don't care. And I really respected that you said that in your book, that you knew he was telling you something.
Well, yeah, that was foreign to me a little bit, right? I grew up more, in going to Sunday school and all that stuff, and I was had a busy big job, and I was raising 2 kids and wanted to be a loving wife, and so I was just busy. I didn't know much about the spiritual realm and souls and on all that stuff, and so once, Jack was missing and baby Lydia, some intuitives, people with abilities that maybe you and I don't have, came forward and said, we'd like to help try to find clues to find the missing kids, and we won't charge you a dime. Like, they just wanted to do it using their talent. Their talent happens to be communication, I guess, understanding, communication with the beyond. And the stuff, that's what's written part of the book, these stunning, and I don't say it that anyone, I want you to believe it or not. I really don't care if you believe it or not. I don't. I just I was witness to things. So was my team, and I just wanted to share what we experienced and let the reader conclude for themselves. But for me, spiritually, from someone who came from a basis of faith, it just expanded it for me of, I think we all are souls, and we're more than our physical bodies. So when our physical body wears out and we go away, I don't think our soul does. I think it lives on, and it's just at a frequency or a vibration that our human eyes and senses cannot see, but it's there. And so that's why I think, Betsy, you said you've gotten some clues from, some signs from your husband. Absolutely. Like a lot of times if we're all energy, sometimes they can flicker with electricity in the hospital.
Yes.
My cell phone went off, like just random blasting. And I'm like, what is that? And then at my new home, this one light flickers all the time. And I just really think it's my son just messing with me or saying good morning.
Yes. Yeah. I understand, because this is weird. My husband's TV didn't work for a while before he died. Yeah. And then my husband died January 1st, 2020. And then something told me, like mid-January, go put the TV on, Betsy. And it worked.
Yep. Yeah,
it worked for a few months. Yes, and sometimes the light, flickers. And it's funny because the other day some shower gel fell out of a basket, and my son Josh said, "That's Daddy, isn't it?" I said, "Yes." That's Daddy telling you that he's around. And I love the fact that I think that losing someone, and this might sound crazy to people, but when you suffered such a loss, it can make you a stronger person. And you had such strength in you to find Jack's remains, even if people didn't believe you. You advocated for that. And it took you, 5 years? It was 3 or 5 years, Kim?
It was about 3.5 years. About 3 years, 4 months, I think, was the minimum.
To insist that you knew something was out there. Can you tell the audience, because I think this is so beautiful amidst the tragedy, of why you titled your book Where Yellow Flowers Bloom? And what does
Sure.
What does that mean?
So where yellow flowers bloom. So I give credit to my daughter, who's now 20. She helped come up with the idea for the book, and I think she hit it perfectly. So when the part of the mountain came down, right, and it roared through and destroyed 62 homes and damaged 150 more. As it was doing that, it was destroying all the stuff in people's garages, their housing insulation, their toxic insect repellents that are in their house somewhere. It's destroying the plumbing. So what became of the stuff that came down was what the university called, the anthropology department called, like a toxic soup with arsenic and other really bad bugs in it, right? And the professor working with us, we had a forensic anthropologist working with us to look for the kids, and she said nothing really should grow in that soil. It's just bad. And where we ended up, the debris pile we ended up finding some of my son's remains was covered with a glorious array of yellow wildflowers. And so when the students clipped some of those flowers for me and brought them to me in a vase, and they said, life found a way. And I said, no, love found a way. And that's why it becomes more of a metaphor for me for life, where yellow flowers bloom is look for the beauty where there really shouldn't be any, right? Or that there's no good reason to see any beauty, but see the beauty because it's there. And that's what I saw. I mean, how tragically sad it was to finally find some of my son, yet there was beauty there, and that was I think how we have to approach life, right? Look for the beauty, even if common sense says there shouldn't be any.
That's so true. I'll tell you, Kim, I'm going to be 66 in December. My husband was 66 when he died. My brother was 67. Mm-hmm. I now am more aware to enjoy each day, see the beauty in each day, even if it's raining, even if I'm getting water coming into my basement, even if there's problems, to enjoy the beauty, and that life is just too friggin' short.
It is, right? And we've got it's a one-act show, and we've got to take full advantage of it, right? And we're going to all get challenges in it, all of us. Everyone's path is going to face something they didn't want, but still look for the beauty.
That's very true. And I just admire your strength, your vulnerability, and just being so honest on what you were feeling and going through in your book. I don't want to give the whole book away. I want people to read it. And I'm telling you, folks, read this book and you will be deeply touched. Your I guess you would say tenacity. You have a stubbornness. Like you're like, no, my son's out there, and we're going to find him. Mm-hmm. And you were just so determined, and you were an advocate, and that's what we need to do. You know, when we have a gut instinct that something is there, that something is going to happen, we have to follow that. And that's what you did.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
I mean, my every fiber, because they had said to me in the hospital, no, he probably just went to the ocean. And every fiber in my body said he did not. And then logic told us it didn't when we looked at the map and the flows and where my daughter and myself and the dog were found, where all the Canton items were found, where the psychic clues were coming in. I knew intrinsically that he was out there. And then when some of the people who tried to help with their communication abilities, Jack would come through and say, I will be found. Just chill out. I don't know when, I don't know where, but I will be found. And my son was an Eagle Scout. He didn't lie. He was a good, really good, great kid. And so I'm like, he's not going to mess with me. If he's saying I'm going to be found, okay. Just, it gave me permission to not be so frantic in it and relax more into it, but keep plugging along.
Yes, and your son was very well known, very well liked, as well as your husband. And, the community love that the community had for your husband and son just is a testament to how they were when they were alive. Yeah. And, their memories are forever with people. And I don't know about you, Kim, but it annoys the crap out of me when people say, oh, get over it. Why do you still talk about them? Why do you still say, what you went through? Because I'm going to tell the audience this, and I'm a Jersey girl, so I tell it like it is. Straight up. We will always love and miss our loved ones. We want to talk about them, and why shouldn't we be able to? I think that, the memories that they pop up on Facebook, yes, they're bittersweet, but you know what? Your husband lived on this earth. Your son lived on this earth. Why can't we honor and talk and honor their memories? There's no reason not to. And people might think I'm nuts. I buy Matt a birthday cake, and Josh and I sing to Matt, happy birthday. We integrate our grieving with our living.
And your traditions,
and I'm sure you do the same.
Yeah, you have to have
traditions. Your traditions.
You have your traditions, and I mean, if people who've been so a rich part of your life, of course you want to share some of those memories, and I know with Jack's friends, because he was only 17, so it was really tough on those junior high school. All of a sudden, their friend just wasn't in class anymore. The seat was empty, right? And they didn't know what to do. That was their first kind of hit with death, maybe other than maybe a grandparent that they had. And they didn't know what to do. And so I did talk about Jack, and it gave them permission. They saw through me talking about him that it was okay for them. And now one thing I love so much is some of my son's friends. They're all pretty much all graduated college now, but when they were in college and they'd come back into town for their breaks or Thanksgiving break or holiday break, they would stop by to see me. And it really warmed my heart and they knew that they could talk about him, and it was healthy for them to talk about him, because our culture doesn't do, compared to other cultures, and there's books on this, that other cultures have much more comfort around the ceremony of death and death. And our culture doesn't. I mean, look at even in the funeral homes, right? The body's kind of whisked back, it's prepared. People decide, do they want to see it or not? Most decide no, and then it's just this box that comes out, and the box goes in the ground. Whereas other cultures, there's ceremonies to sit with the deceased, to touch the deceased, to say goodbye to the deceased in the human form, right? Not in a box, not tucked away in the coroner's office, whatever. And there's rituals. So I think our culture has, the U.S. culture, just how it evolved, right? It doesn't have some of these patterns that some of the other countries in the world do, which some of them are just beautiful to hear about. And they say it's very healing as well.
Yes, and I like that in your book that you point out that, your daughter's friends came, to your home, your son's friends, and, they saw parties and honoring Jack's memory, honoring Dave's memory. And, we will never get over, folks. You don't get over losing someone. I got news for you. You don't. The pain is always there. It changes somewhat, but it's there. And, I equate grieving, Kim, with clothing. Some days it's heavy like a coat, and some days it's light. But we're always aware it becomes a part of us. Grieving is a part of us. And people, unless they have gone through it, they just don't understand it. And I'm trying to do my part to change society with my shows about grieving. I'm very open with my grieving because, other cultures, they do. They come, and they sit with the family, and they have like some cultures a month long.
Chivas, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Different things. And, it was tough with COVID because people didn't have that. They didn't have that opportunity.
COVID really made it so tough for everyone.
Yeah, it's difficult. My brother died during COVID. He didn't have COVID, but he died during COVID, and thankfully my other brother and my mom were there. They allowed them to be there when Bradley died, but I had to say goodbye to Bradley, my brother, over the phone. And, my brother was very popular in our hometown, and not many people at the funeral because of COVID. And I felt really bad, for my mom, because not so many people came to see her that normally would have come because of, COVID. And I definitely can relate to, you and your daughter being a family, because that's how it is with Josh and I. It's just the two of us. And, we start new traditions. And my son has a cognitive disability, Kim. So sometimes he doesn't understand, or a different way of thinking. And before Matt died, and Josh was great with Matt as a caregiver, Josh said to me, "Will you always celebrate, your anniversary and Dad's birthday and Father's Day?" I said, "Of course I will. We'll never stop celebrating your father's life." And, when you talk about Dave and Jack, when people talk about their loved ones, it's not that we're stuck in grief, folks. We have a right to talk about our loved ones. And,
we adapt, right? We integrate it and adapt.
Yeah.
And part of the integration is having some of the new traditions to honor people who were so important in our life.
Exactly. You hit it right on the head. I mean, we have a new tradition now. I cannot cook Thanksgiving dinner on Thanksgiving. We go out. But I will do it on Christmas Eve. And I just realized, this weekend, why I cannot cook Thanksgiving dinner on Thanksgiving. Because that was the last holiday meal that Matt had with us. That was the last one. And I know it might sound strange to other people that I could cook it for Christmas Eve, but for Thanksgiving, I just can't do it. Maybe eventually I will, but not right now. And that's okay. It's okay to have new traditions.
Yeah. Life is about, we move forward and we adapt, right? One of the most successful things, I read a book once and they said one thing that some of the most successful people in life do, and define success however you want, but to me it could be just happy and content, right, is they adapt. They adapt to their changing situation, because guess what? Things are going to change on us all the time. Interest rates, maybe a sudden death, an unexpected friend, whatever. And so all we can do is how we can learn to adapt and still find meaning in life, right? And that, I think, is how we move forward.
And you in Jack and Dave's memory, have done advocacy and are honoring their memory. And, I think sometimes people are afraid to mention our loved one's name because it might upset us. But it's hey, folks, we know they're gone. We would love to hear you mention our loved one's name and tell stories. Share with us your special memories. We want to hear that. And that's so important to us, is to hear someone say, what your loved one meant to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to ask you, Kim, as we wrap up, is, for lack of better words, but how are you doing now at this time?
Every day is a day at a time. Every day is a day at a time,
yes.
Right? But I'm moving forward, and I'm looking for what I can be grateful about. For example, just before this interview, I was out in my yard, and my plumeria plant that I had planted 2 years ago is in bloom, and I just took a few pictures of the beautiful pink petals on this plumeria plant, right, and just taking a moment to say, that is gorgeous. It's doing that kind of stuff. Or last night, called my neighbor up who, her kids are off at school and she's single, and I said, hey, let's grab dinner. Let's just go out and grab dinner just to have company and gab, So it's a day at a time, but there's a lot of living still to do. I have a lot of living still to do, and I want to do it. And I think the best way to honor my son and my husband is to do that, to live and thrive for the rest of the days I'm granted on this earth. They would do not. I know for sure. I would put money on this, even in Vegas, but I don't think anyone's loved one would want to look down from wherever they are, heaven or wherever they are, and see their loved one suffering in pain and grief and tears and in the fetal position. They would, because I believe they're in pure joy. They don't have the encumbrances of, taxes and earthly stuff.
Right.
So they're in pure joy, I believe, and they want us to be brilliantly happy. And so I keep that as my filter. Yes, there's sad days, absolutely. Do I miss them? Every day I do. Yet there's a lot of living to do, and to move forward with them still in my heart, yet with a heart open for who else might end up, maybe I one day remarry, right? Who knows?
Right. That's beautiful, Kim, and I totally understand that because Josh and I, we do the same thing. I feel the same way. Actually, this show, Chatting with Betsy, it's because of Matt. Matt was my inspiration to get in my car and raise awareness on Alzheimer's and talk about caregiving. If it wasn't for Matt, I wouldn't have done that otherwise. That's for sure. And, I realized in Matt's journey, and I thanked Matt when he was dying for his journey, how it changed me. And I promised him I would continue on. And like 2 weeks after Matt died, Josh said, oh, can I go to a hockey game? Is that okay? I said, of course. Your father loved hockey. You know that. He would have loved for you to go.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important, and I liked how you let your daughter, you had a very good relationship with your daughter, and to talk about grieving and to let her deal with it in her own way. It's so important to have that communication with your children, no matter what their age, for them to be able to tell you how they feel, and not to judge them.
Right. I mean, adolescents grieve differently than adults. Their brain will handle it the way their developmental part of their brain can handle it. And then as the developmental brain, how I understand it, matures, the other maybe manifestation from grief comes out a little bit differently for them. And that's just part of their process because of the age in which it happened for them, right? So, everyone's different. And everyone, we all have our own unique backgrounds, right? And so we all do it differently. But if we can support one another just with grace, I think that's a helpful thing. Yes.
Well, I want to thank you, Kim Cantin, and folks, you spell it Cantin, for coming on my show, sharing about your book. Folks, run and get this book, Where Yellow Flowers Bloom, a true story of hope through unimaginable loss. It will touch your heart. It really will. It will help you. It was, to me, very inspiring. And you'll laugh, and I even laughed. I cried. A lot of emotions in this book, and I highly, highly recommend it. And if you want to go on Kim Canteen's website, it is Kim, K-I-M, Canteen, CANTIN.com, and you could purchase the book on Amazon.com or wherever you buy your books. If it's not in the bookstore, please tell them to order it. I know Amazon will order, Barnes & Noble will order a book for you if it's not in their store. If it's in their stock, they will order it. And just about everything is available on Amazon.com. So I want to thank you again, Kim, for sharing your story, writing about your beloved son and husband. And would you mind if I dedicate this show to them?
Oh, that would be lovely. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. And it's great speaking with you. And if you ever write another book, come on my show.
Okay, thanks, Ann.
You're welcome. You too. Thank you so much. Folks, sometimes I'm just speechless, but I'll tell you what. After, losing Matt and reading this book, and Kim's book really did help me in many ways. So I really recommend this book. And I just want to thank everyone for listening. Information about where you could buy this book and Kim's website will be in the blog that Jeannie White, the station manager, writes. So thank you, Jeannie. And Jeannie produces the show. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And thank you for listening and subscribing. And if you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, it is for free on Spotify, Spreaker, iHeart, YouTube, Amazon Music. Tell your friends, share the show. I want to help as many people as possible, and I can only do it if you share the show. And when you share the show, you're honoring Matt's memory, because it's out of Matt's journey that Chatting with Betsy came about. And I am very grateful and thankful to be a host and to be able to share resources and to hear people's stories. I'll tell you what, folks, I interview many people, you know that, from all walks of life. But the best interviews that I really love, that's really my heart, is for stories like Kim Canteen's and other people who had a tragedy and they became triumphant and they are doing something. They're honoring their loved ones. They're living life. And I can't say it enough, to really enjoy life. It's too short. Don't sweat the small stuff. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, to please be kind and shine your light bright. Because if we all did that, it'd be a much happier and peaceful world and brighter. And if you want, you can follow me on my Facebook page, Betsy, B-E-T-S-Y, middle initial E, last name Wurzel, W-U-R-Z-E-L. That's it for today. Thanks again for listening. Until we chat again soon, be safe. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Bye-bye now.